Hello, Looney listeners. You're listening to episode 14 of Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. I'm one of your cage fighters, Ray.
I'm your other man-turned-beast in a cage, Connor. And this week, we have so much news for your delight. We have the final issue of Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight, issue 14 before the all-new run starts. And we take back to a classic run with issue 20 of the Benson run. So sit back, grab our issues, and get your Khonshu on.
Connor. We are back, episode 14, and in a sharp contrast to last episode, we have got a mountain of news to get through. How are you, first of all?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. It's the end of exam season, so I am very tired, but I'm just about done. So next week will be all good. Actually, Wednesday, the big new comic book day, I'll be finished with exams, so it's a good feeling. So, yeah, I mean, you've been pretty busy yourself, I hear.
Yeah. I've let it. It's no secret. I tell everyone. Eve and I, we did a big move. So finally got all our stuff in the new place. It took about 8.5 hours for the movers to bring it all in. It all culminated in our 3-meter-long couch being winched up through the balcony, so that was quite an experience. But we're all unpacked. I'd say we're 100% done. All the boxes have been unpacked and everything's in its place. Last night we had a housewarming as well, which was like a double for a housewarming and a kind of like belated birthday for Eve. So it's been all systems go. And today has been, I guess, the first day in the last couple of weeks where we've been able to kind of sit back a bit and just start enjoying the new place. But more importantly, haven't missed a beat with Into the Night, so excited to get into episode 14, which is a seminal episode as well, isn't it, Connor? Because it's the last issue for Lemire's fantastic run.
Yeah, we've kind of had our own little thing going with sort of the way we've done our modern reviews and our classic reviews, but that all changes as we don't have a new review every week, but we'll be mixing up. We got figure reviews, we got animation reviews, we got everything coming up, so don't you be amiss as we're crying for the end of Lemire's run as the Bemis run starts next week.
Yeah, it's definitely heading towards
this
Uncharted.
Week, actually.
Well, yeah, it is technically. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this Wednesday, right? My gosh, it's so close. It's crazy close. But we are heading towards Uncharted territory, and our security blanket, which was the Lemire run, is coming to an end. But looking forward to all the reviews that we have up ahead. Especially one of the first things, I guess, Connor, which ties into our first bit of news, we'll speak later on, would be the Funko Pops, which I've seen on our Facebook group. A lot of the loonies have got their hands on a little Funko Pop already, so that's pretty good to see.
Yeah, fantastic. I think just about every retailer who can get them is getting them. I know my store's got them coming in. You've bought yours online, yeah?
Yeah, it's been surprisingly easy, considering they were saying it's an LA Comic Con exclusive, the glow-in-the-dark one. One loony posted up Pop Culture, which is, is one of the news items coming up, but he just mentioned how you can just order it online. I think they're based in Victoria, Australia, and you can just order it, and I've already got confirmation that it's going to be delivered, I think, tomorrow, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure when mine will be coming in for doing a joint review on the pod, but yeah, I ordered a glow-in-the-dark, adjusting his tie with the sleeves up and the classic sort of sleeves down, nice walk. There's 2 variations you'll find, but yeah. They're great. They're the regular price of Funkos, I think.
Yep. I think, Aussie dollar, they come out to be about $18, $19, which I think is, I think it's regular. But how crazy is this? Like, we've been, I think for a while now, we've been wondering about, whether there'd be a Moon Knight Funko Pop. There isn't one, and we're finally here with not only one, but we've got one special edition one. Well, two actually, because as we mentioned before, there are two versions of the glow in the dark, so you can either get the blue or the green one, and I think you can't tell until you bring it into a dimly lit or a dark room.
There's a fair amount of glow too. Like I have a black suit Spider-Man glow in the dark, and it's nowhere near as bright as the Moon Knight one.
Have you got a Funko Pop Spider-Man? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a
awesome.
And Spider-Gwen and two Batmans.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say aficionado, but I sure do have 4.
Yeah. Right. And I think if any character has to glow in the dark, it's got to be Mr. Knight or Moon Knight. So it's good to hear that he's he's shining a light in the darkness. But just going back a bit before, we've got like tour reviews. We can cover. Connor and I, we've been talking about wanting to review the Ultimate Spider-Man animated episode with Moon Knight in there. There's also games, Connor, as well. Contest of Champions, and also a couple of other Marvel Future Fight, I think, with Moon Knight in there. So there's plenty to cover, and we'll still do our. We're still pretty keen on doing having some guest narrators. Who we have one this evening as well, which is fantastic. But there's been a lot of interest, Connor, in people wanting to do it. So that's got to be a good sign.
Yeah, we're hot off the press with the biggest Moon Knight podcast it ever was.
Yeah, so looking so excited. I'm not only looking excited, I am excited for it. But also as well, kind of, we were just chatting just quickly before we went on air. You finally caught up with a bit of a Thor Ragnarok earlier today.
Yeah, I saw it about midday today. It was a packed cinema even then on a 12 o'clock Sunday, but it was a fantastic movie. I think it's top 3 for mine, being Homecoming, Winter Soldier, and then Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. I loved it. I love the characters, the acting, the comedy always struck with me. It was great.
Those are pretty good top 3 films, I reckon, and it's a good sign when you think of your top 3 that you kind of have to cull a couple, because those 3 are pretty good. For me, I'd put Civil War, and I do love the Ant-Man film in a different way, so I'd have to put that up there somewhere. But it's a great sign from Marvel. And were there a lot of belly laughs in the cinema, with a full cinema?
Oh yeah, you know it. It was always going off.
Oh yeah, it's the best sort of film. A best sort of experience for that film, I reckon. That type of film that goes for a lot of laughs, and you've got to be in a packed cinema for it to get the full effect. But yeah, I mean, look, let's not dwell on it. There are plenty of other great podcasts out there that will cover and review Thor Ragnarok. But let's get into the news, Connor. So the first bit of news that we got, which I think, again, literally came, I think, the day after we released episode 13, was Marvel Moon Knight Funko, and one of our loonies posted it up, saying that Pop Culture, which you can check out, popculture.com.au, they were saying that we have them in stock. Basically, there were no caveats to it. You could actually just order it. There was nothing about one per customer or we only have a limited number. It seemed pretty much business as usual. For Aussies and for those of you overseas who may find it hard to get a hold of, I definitely recommend you try out Pop Culture. So like Connor said, I've ordered glow in the dark and a standard one from there. So it's and it's already on its way. I think it's coming tomorrow. So that's really good news for Aussie Looney fans. But again, if you're maybe in non-US and it's a bit harder to come by, give this website a go. I'm pretty sure they do international shipping.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think it's great. We got our Moon Knight Legend figures coming in soon as well. They're still available as well.
Yes, that's right.
I sadly can't imagine them being on the shelves for like months into the future, so I think if you are undecided or haven't jumped on board, if you are ordering your Pop Funkos, if you got that cheddar there, you get your Legends figures in.
Yeah, that's true, because the legend figures are, I mean, they're becoming harder and harder to find, and in some ways they're harder to find than these Funko Pops, which I thought would be hard to find. Um, but yeah, like I said, pop culture, they haven't disappointed me yet, so I will be using them again. And a short thing as well, for anyone who orders over $100 within Australia, you get free shipping. So if you've got a few mates, why not just pull it all together and save yourself some money with free shipping. So that was the first bit of news. Connor, what was that? I think the second one was something that you posted on.
Yes, it's crazy. So next week is Moon Knight 188. You know, we started this podcast 15 weeks ago, and honestly, it seemed like this issue was coming 2 years away, like our next bit of Moon Knight, and now it's just next week. It's properly surreal. So I think, I don't know quite the day, but we got a full lettered preview. Actually, not one, but 2 lettered previews this week of separate pages.
Right.
The one we'll link below is one from Buzz Comics.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to do a preview, I'd click on that one. There's another one by adventuresinpoortaste.com, which I feel not like super spoilery, but at the same time, that's like 6 pages of your issue you're getting in previews. We're so close, like 3 days out from the book. You should. I'm feeling just weighted off.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think a couple of the loonies had mentioned something like that as well. It was so close, and I mean, 6 pages out of what, 22, 23. I'd be happy to read 1 or 2, but it is exciting to know that it's out there.
Oh yeah, and it just this whole week has just been, new people tweeting about it. We've had 2 new previews. I think, we've got a couple of articles coming up in this news segment as well. This week has just been every day just a new source of hype for this issue this Wednesday. It's absolutely mental. Ray, did you want to go through the preview, or should we leave it for loonies to click at their own discretion before Wednesday?
Let's just leave it for the loonies to have a look. But just overall impressions. I just want to say that I'm looking at it now, and I'm loving the art by Jason Burrows.
Oh, isn't it absolutely fantastic?
It's really weird because we've seen some of the preview art, right, of his, and it's really cool. Sometimes it's quite stylized and simple, whereas other times he does get into the details. But I love these close-ups of the faces and of Dr. Emmett and the patient who... What was he called again? He had a number, wasn't he? Anyway,
86.
86, yeah. But anyway, the art was really good. Anything to take away from this, Connor, as well, from your perspective?
Just generally, the news we've gotten this week, this issue is going to be like no other Moon Knight issue before. It is absolutely mental. It's just going to set up this new run in a crazy new way. Before the next issue, 189 later this month, will actually be the one that even introduces Moon Knight to us in this run. This is just sort of a crazy off-the-wall issue of this just batshit insane world that Bemis and Burrows are setting up, and it looks fantastic. Actually,
it does look good. And
just sort of a little tidbit from the other preview, a previous unlettered preview is shown to be unlettered. There's actually a previous preview page we've got and has been shown with its lettering. So,
okay.
Make of that what you will.
Right. Yeah. I wonder which one. I haven't checked it, so I'm trying to keep myself. Any kind of spoiler free, except for I'm just looking at this page, which was on the Buzz Comics one, which is pretty cool. The other thing I noticed as well, again, not going to get too much into it, but with Max Bemis's writing, it really reminded me of Fool Killer. I'm interested to know as well, Connor, if he did the same with the Worst X-Men, which you'd read. He's not short on words. Let's just say that, but he's not overly heavy. But there's a nice meaty chunk of text in these panels. So it's I'm looking forward to reading the whole issue. But what do you think? You think too many words or?
No, this is really good writing, and I think it's this issue being so particular, I'm not sure how wordy this will be so representative of what we'll get later with Moon Knight. I think this is very particular, but I love the writing for the characters. The patient 86, who will be our big focus of this issue, is absolutely fascinating, terrifying, and just a weird look into a psyche that Bemis just absolutely nails.
Yeah, there's I think later on in one of the articles he mentions there is a horror and a scare element to it, which he hopes to instill in this whole Moon Knight tone, the tone of the book. So yeah, I can't wait to see what that is. I know that, just going back to the text, just because I don't know, the other writers that we have come across as well, kind of like to me immediately like Charles Soule from Daredevil, especially with in particular the courtroom issue. Some writers tend to really some writers describe a lot in their text, and sometimes it doesn't give much for the artist to do. What am I saying? Sorry, going around in circles. Sometimes they put. There is a danger of putting too much text in, and it doesn't give enough space for the artist to breathe. But there is also a fine line. You obviously you don't want the artwork to say everything, right? You've got to actually put a bit of meat to the bones as well. And with Bemis's writing from Fool Killer and from what I see in Moon Knight, there is a nice chunky bit of text there, but but looking art wise as well, there's a lot. Like he gives Burroughs scope to do 3/4 big panels and close up. So I don't think it's compromising at all to the artwork.
No, not at all. Yeah, I think the most important draw is that managing text and exposition is always hard, but Bemis's particular writing in this instance, in this context, every word here has purpose. You're looking at a larger text bubble, but reading it, you never feel like you're not so much bored, but being over-explained, or there's a lot of like actual psychology and that sort of jargon and language used here, and having that in there obviously lengthens the text bubbles, but the way that written is in itself like brilliant and just feels so natural, especially I'm guessing with the character work. And as you said, there's still panels here, awesome panels of like shots of just the eyes that still give way to 2 short text bubbles. And
yeah, no, it's I think it's very well done, and quite interested to see, and obviously the subject of it being a lot of a mental illness, so there is a lot of explaining to do as well. You can't let the images speak for themselves, because one, you're looking at Dr. Emmett, who's like a psychologist, right, or a doctor studying this mental patient. So there's going to have to be an exchange, but it's all quite exciting.
Would any final words before we move on to our next piece? Obviously, we don't want to go too in depth. Full panel by panel next week.
Yeah, exactly. And like as Connor said, we'll leave it to the loony listeners. You can read it at your leisure, but it is definitely worth looking at the previews. And whether or not you read the 6 pages or just the 1 or 2, it's up to you. So next up, we have. This was put in. I actually didn't really check out too much this article. Kind of, it was Marvel characters that may have surprise cameos in Avengers Infinity War. Did you give this a read?
No, I didn't actually see this one in the group this week, sadly.
Okay, it was good to put in there. Very thankful that the Looney posted it up. I think it was Tommy that posted it in there. I don't know, like with Avengers Infinity War, I think it's going to be a really grand film, and there's like 60 odd cast members or whatever. And if there's special cameos here and there, look, I really couldn't be too fussed if you see Moon Knight. It'll be good to see maybe a hint or a nod towards Moon Knight, but I really don't mind. I mean, there are too many other characters there to be invested in to worry about surprise cameos. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think definitely. I don't really. This is such a massive scale, and what we know of the Infinity War, it almost wouldn't make sense for Moon Knight to be there. Like, this unestablished character makes his debut by, I don't know, throwing a crescent dart to someone on screen just doesn't really seem to fit with in. And I suppose I wouldn't want that sort of. I mean, obviously we want Moon Knight in, but I prefer his own opening into the world, whether it be in his own arc in a Netflix show or his own Netflix show. Than more than just sort of being tied to a cameo in the MCU and having his sort of fate stuck there if anything would change.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see. We've always talked about it. I wouldn't mind a little nod that doesn't reveal too much, but only to the fans. I wouldn't mind seeing a Jake Lockley, drive someone in a cab or something like that, maybe, or there be a building with Grant Industries or something like that. That doesn't necessarily. They don't delve into more, but is just there. I think that would be pretty cool. I think it was a while ago, Connor. We mentioned. I thought I saw in the Doctor Strange film. I saw one of the buildings say Spectacle, but I think I was wrong. I was wrong there. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind something like that. I mean, just like 1 or 2 seconds, if anything. But yeah, you're right. I wouldn't want them to try and kind of shoehorn Moon Knight in there with a crescent dart. I mean, because people, first time viewers, or non-comic book fans, will just be going, "What the hell was that? Was that someone else? Are we supposed to know that person?" So it was. I can't wait for Infinity War, but I wouldn't really care if Moon Knight isn't in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sort of takes us on to a bit of an interesting topic, one that I suppose might even put a pin in that, possibly, that Marvel will no longer be able to sell licenses to companies not owned by Disney.
Yeah.
What do you take from this? It's so... just to recap the article, there's nothing. There's basically that title and sort of a statement that says that title, but Disney's given no specific as to what this means for the Netflix shows. I know some of the shows are continuing. Obviously, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff that's already going ahead, like the second seasons of the Netflix and the new Warriors show coming out on Freeform, Cloak and Dagger Runaway. They still are all there, but there's nothing that shows whether we can even have new characters in the Netflix universe now. Well, it's just,
I'm not sure where this came from. I was reading, there was a thread on it as well, from the Defenders TV podcast. So we had, last week, we had Derek as our guest narrator, and he's one of the hosts there, and they were discussing it, and I tend to agree with Derek. I don't think this will impact too much in the immediate future. It's just hard to say. I mean, it's a bit vague, isn't it? Maybe I'm just being optimistic, and I'd like to think that Netflix is doing so well in partnership with Marvel. It'd be silly not to. Not to continue that trend, at least for the next few years, before something like this happens. And again, I'm not too savvy in the business side of things. I don't know how long it will take to turn this around, or if at a flick of a switch they can do it. And next year it's an edict that's been passed. I don't know. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, to look at this. If I was to look at this in a negative light, this could be pretty scary. I dislike the vagueness, Disney. I feel, especially in its TV show universe and its separation from the MCU, their press releases have usually been super vague, and it's been, it's concerning just because of the lack of information. I mean, this headline might be nothing to worry about because it might just mean like Disney can't partner with like some other channel in America, but because it's already with Netflix, they can fund their own things and stuff like that. Or it could mean we're getting no new heroes there. Just the vagueness, it scares me. And it comes on the back of the fact that Marvel is getting its own subscription service soon. That will be its streaming service. Better way of putting it, that will probably have its own TV show. So, I mean, there's part of me that's.
But that would be under Disney, right? Still.
Yeah, but but I'm just not sure how it would connect with Netflix and stuff. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
But I mean, hopefully, I'm feeling hopefully that this isn't too big a change. I think hopefully it's more just Netflix won't Disney won't partner with any new companies. It'll just stick with the ones it already has, rather than not seeing another new hero on the Netflix silver screen.
Because to me, it seems like they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little with, because it says further down in the article, with Disney plans on doing this, and Disney being the Disney production and company it is, I don't think it would lean towards any R-rated superheroes to make the cut. Whereas you look at Netflix and, right off the bat with Daredevil, that was ultra graphic, right? And up there in the R or at least MA rating. So in Australia we have a rating MA, which I think is R in the US. And we also have an R rating as well, which is beyond MA 15. But so Disney wouldn't be taking that on board. But those characters and Netflix have proven how successful that is. So either Disney would say, look, Netflix, you've got those characters, but you're not going to have any more, because Disney would probably, they'd either deprive Netflix of more success, possibly, or the same thing would be that they can't kind of introduce an R rating, or maybe they can, into the Disney fold, because it goes against. I mean, Disney. It's never going to be. It's never going to release a Deadpool or something. So the loser at this are the viewers and Marvel, who have a wealth of really interesting characters that unfortunately require a bit more than a PG rating. I mean, they've gotten away with the Avengers and all that, and because the Avengers are kind of like, and I'm sure when the Fantastic Four come back to Marvel, you'll get it's all very family fun, and PG, and you can still have a rollicking kind of action-packed time. But there are other, with Marvel Knights and the Punisher and Ghost Rider and all that, to be true to the character, and Marvel are true to their characters when they translate them to film. You need that extra kind of bit of edge. So I can't see what they're going to do, and the only thing I can see is that Marvel's going to really lose out on it if this goes ahead, unless there's some sort of agreement where Disney go, okay, well, I don't know, unless they just and they let Marvel continue what they do, releasing R-rated characters, whether it be a Netflix or some other subsidiary service that they'll provide that will be Marvel, or they just continue with their relationship with Netflix, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. I think you hit the nail on the head. The future of this will really depend on how much Disney trusts in who it's already partnered with, whether it trusts Netflix to keep making those great R18 shows for profit and popularity, and whether it trusts Marvel to not just be its lackey, but to actually be its own creative mastermind. And we'll definitely keep abreast of this. This is pretty important for, anything even slightly attached to the Marvel universe. So
yeah,
we'll stay abreast.
Have you been still keeping up to date with the Inhumans as well?
No, I haven't. Sadly, been a bit busy. I have them there. I have the Gifted as well. We have Legion coming back in February, so it's a good time for Marvel shows.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, look, I guess I was about to say, and nothing to take away from the Inhumans, because I've only watched 3 episodes, and it's starting to look really good. Unfortunately, I haven't got Wi-Fi set up over here, so I can't really watch the other episodes until a bit later. But I guess my point was saying the Netflix shows and Legion. Those sorts of shows Marvel seem to be hitting it out of the park, TV series wise. And if you look at those shows aren't, they aren't like family fun shows. There's a bit of, edge to them. So yeah, I mean, just looking at Marvel's track history, and even with, I'm looking forward to Cloak and Dagger. I mean, although that looks like more of a young teen kind of thing, it still looks pretty damn interesting, and same with The Gifted as well. So yeah, it seems that the successful TV shows are those that aren't that aren't too corny. I mean, Shield itself started off quite shakily, but it got better because, well, you only have to look at the last season, and it got put to a later time slot, so they actually got a higher rating, right? It was an M rating or something like that. And it was immediately more interesting. Maybe it's just the demographic that I'm in, but I find those series is a lot more appealing than kind of safe, family fun films or shows. Nothing against that though. Sorry, loonies, if you do like those shows. I can't. I know Daniel from Geek Street Podcast. He and Joe, they love Gilmore Girls. So each in their own. So yeah. So so we'll keep a close eye on that, loonies, as Connor said, because it is important, especially if you do love your shows as well as your comics. Next bit of news, Connor. We are starting to head towards some really cool stuff. More of the comic side of things. We got something from Bleeding Cool, Marvel Legacy Moon Knight. There was a 188 review. I Am the God Ra. What did you make of this, Connor?
So, Looney's Bleeding Cool got out like a review at the start of the previous week.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've Marvel's putting a lot of trust in the review, and it was an absolutely glowing review. 9.5 out of 10. That just shows the quality lining up with what everyone else has said online. It's a fairly in-depth review. I mean, if you haven't clicked on it, possibly wait. Like, if you're already sold on buying this issue, of course, I'm not sure the review's entirely necessary for you, but I think it was a good review. It certainly showed me some stuff that got me, possibly even more hyped than I already was. But yeah, what do you think, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're so close to the release date. I agree. I think you can hold off on it. Personally, as well, I do enjoy reading the book and then reading the reviews, like rather than vice versa, because you tend to go into the story, without any influences and stuff, and see if you really enjoy it yourself. And what I do like from reviews is looking back and reading it and going, oh yeah, that was true here or there, and trying to find out things that you may not necessarily have picked up while you were reading it. But so I'd suggest probably leave it a bit until come Wednesday after you've read the issue. There's I don't want to give anything away here, but you mentioned there's slight pacing issues here and there, like it may seem to get but I think if we look at this, Connor, as it's issue 188, but it's essentially an issue 1 for Bemis, and we know issue 1s generally there's a lot of setup involved, and this is definitely the case because coming off the Lemire run, Bemis is, he's putting his own stamp on things and he's introducing new characters, so there's definitely going to be, some slower moments, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely the plan. It's why we're getting 2 issues in the first month, and the first month alone, I think, writing these issues, these guys really understood that this is the issue that sets everything up and then moves into motion, really, next issue. And the fact that a setup exposition issue is still apparently a 9.5 out of 10 just sort of shows what we're dealing with here and what we can get with this run.
Yeah, that's a pretty high. It's pretty high praise, actually. I mean, I'm just recalling when we reviewed issue 1 of Lemire's run. Like, that was just brilliant, wasn't it? And that would be on par with a 9.5 out of 10. So if this person who's reviewing it is Joshua Davison, if he's anything like us, Connor, then I think we're on to a real winner for this first issue.
For sure.
Yeah. And finally, we got something else straight out of the Marvel
the Vaults of Marvel
website. Yeah, and this was Moon Knight Bad Moon Rising, and this was a second interview with Max Bemis. I always do enjoy the interviews with the creative artists themselves. This was quite an interesting one. What did you think of this interview, Connor?
It kind of the tagline sort of says, new writer Max Bemis teases 2 new villains, and it seems to talk about the truth. It really doesn't. I was expecting something a bit more concrete, but that said, I think the real takeaway from this interview is just how, not so much influential, but how much love Bemis has put into us, and he wants wants to make this a run that, stands alongside the greats and really sticks with you. And, he says he has a lot of plans. He's obviously planned for this to go on for, who knows, maybe like 40 issues and beyond. And I love what he talks about. This very, particular line, just if I may quote the exiting bit of this article. Every issue is something big introduced permanent to the Moon Knight mythology. At least every other issue is something that's going to change Moon Knight forever. At least in this first arc, he's saying.
Yeah, that's it's pretty. You can read between the lines as well for Bemis. Yeah, he really does. He really does. I think care and care for this character, and he's a bit of a fan, which is really always good to hear. Like as a fan of the character, to hear that the new creative team behind it, have got a vested interest in Moon Knight. What I took from this interview was the creep factor. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
How Bemis was talking. So that Marvel said on a scale of 1 to 10, how creeped out should readers expect to be by these new baddies? And I'm assuming it's by the comic book in general. And Bemis is very realistically saying, well, it's not. I'm not going to say 11 because then I've got nowhere else to go. He set the bench too high. So he goes, I'll give it 188 and 189 issues. I'd give it both about an 8, which is pretty cool. And he goes on to talk about like creepiness and an actual scary vibe, not just So he's really painting a picture of what the tone of this book will be. And remembering his first interview by Marvel as well, he mentioned something along the lines of, this series is tantamount to like reading something at night. You're being immersed in this darkness. So it's got a really creepy vibe to it. And just looking forward to a couple of days from now, Connor.
Yeah, crazy. A whole 3 days we'll be reading this and then reporting back to you on the weekend. I definitely agree on the spookiness factor. I think I really like as well, just along that these villains are going to be mainstay as well. It seems like the mission statement given to Bemis when he was applying was to, make some new villains to stand alongside the existing cast, and the creepiness factor is sort of determined on their introduction, this gauntlet that this first arc will put Moon Knight through. So I think it's totally exciting, and what we've heard about the Sun King so far, it seems like these could be the next Bushmans.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting about this as well, and Bemis touches upon it, just with collaborations in general between writers and artists. Bemis mentions in the article that he created these legacy characters, which will be the Truth and the Sun King, who will be long-lasting characters, but he didn't necessarily have a visual for them, and he relied a lot on Jason Burrows. Being comfortable with letting Jason Burrows come up with something because he's such a big fan of him, that he kind of knew that Burrows would come up with just the right look. So I always find that really interesting, like as a writer, not myself, I'm just talking in general as a writer, how they don't necessarily have a preconceived image or visual of their characters. I always would have thought that they would. I mean, if you look at like Jeff Lemire, albeit him being an artist as well, a penciler, a drawer. Same with Matt Kint. I guess they would have something more visual in their minds as well because they do draw. But I guess with Bemis, he's a pure writer, so it's up to the artist to come up with an idea.
I think he also makes mention that this book was like tailor-made for Burrows. He mentions that once he knew Burrows was on this book, he wrote to his art style, and I think that's a big thing. And I think possibly I remember listening to an interview with Gillian Tamaki, and she was talking about that as an artist herself. The best writers are those that allow for that creative freedom with art, and I think possibly actually seeing sort of Lemire's scripting, it's quite possible to the well that even Lemire leaves it up to the creative freedom of who he's working with.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and just another window into the world of the comic book world and creating within it. I just found it quite interesting. And looking at, I can't remember, Connor, if it's the variant cover or if it's for cover 189, but it's the one with Moon Knight. He's got the bloody hands, and there's two arms coming out for him. I'm assuming that's the Sun King, right?
No, I think that's the Truth.
Oh, the Truth. Sorry, yeah, it would be because the Sun King's the bearded burbler, right? That's okay. Yeah, I mean it looks pretty cool and very. I mean, you can't see much. You can see just the eyes and the arms, but
some nice bloody knuckles.
Sorry,
some nice bloody knuckles.
Bloody knuckles, yeah, but I mean the arms behind it, it's got a very Egyptian kind of look to it, so that's pretty cool. Any last impressions on this article? Very good article, actually. Loonies, I'd recommend you read it. So again, we'll put this on the show notes as well as all the others. But yeah, definitely give this one a whirl. Any last thoughts on it, Connor?
I think just the conversation we had before, I really hope that possibly Bemis releases his scripting for Moon Knight. I'd love to see the creative process on this. Yeah,
I wonder if because I see it a lot with the Valiant comics.
Yeah, they're great for that.
They're really good. Yeah, it's a nice little behind the scenes thing, and I don't think Marvel don't do it enough. They do it in when they do the collected trades or the collections. You might get a few extra pages at the end where they interview the writer or the artist, and they give you a bit more of a backstory. But it'll be really cool. To get into it. But yeah, it's let's wait and see.
Yeah, well, I suppose that closes off our big old news segment.
Yeah, a lot of news there, Loonies, to digest. But we've also got two grand issues to get through as well. So let's head over the moon. Right, so we've got a couple of rip-snorting issues here, Loonies. Connor, before we head into the guest narration, can we get a recap on Lemire's story to date?
Done. Death and Birth, Part 5 of 5. After a confrontation with his alternate identities, in which they seem to disappear for good, Mark realized that to become whole again, he must kill Khonshu. Even with this measure of closure, Mark's past, from hospitalization for mental illness to his entry into mercenary work, to his death at Bushman's hands, follows him. While tracking Khonshu in the Overvoid, Mark traded a goddess for his friend Crawley's freedom, and even faced execution. At that hopeless moment, Mark's identities briefly returned to save him. Finally, Mark has arrived at the mental hospital, where this story began. Khonshu is waiting.
Yes, all primed for the finale for this great run by Lemire. And also we have another guest narrator for us, Connor, which is pretty cool. Her name is Sparky Mularkey, and she has a YouTube channel called Sparky Mularkey Comics, Cosplay and More. And she reviews comics and looks at cosplay. She's also a great cosplayer in her own right as well. I'm not sure if you've seen her Twitter account. Have you, Connor? Or?
Sure.
Yeah. She's a big Taskmaster fan and a big Moon Knight fan as well. So she's got all the ticks from the ITK podcast. So we are just so grateful to have her guest narrate a couple of our issues for review this episode. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Sparky to give us the first issue for review.
Hello, Sparky Mularkey here, and first up on this segment of Bare Bones is Moon Knight Volume 8, Issue Number 14, Death and Birth, Part 5 of 5, released January 4th, 2017. Written by Jeff Lemire, with artwork by Greg Smallwood, colors by Jordi Belair, lettering by VC's Corey Petit, and editing by Jake Thomas, with cover art by Greg Smallwood. We begin with a scene from the past, as the mercenary Mark Spector is slowly making his way across a sea of burning sand after being beaten and left for dead in the Egyptian desert. Suddenly, Mark's other identities of Stephen Grant and Jake Lockley appear, and they try to comfort him, assuring him that they will always be with him. They tell him to rest, and they warn him that it'll be night soon, and he will be coming for them. As night falls, Mark starts to hear Khonshu's voice, and by the light of the moon, Mark is led to the ruins of a great temple. He is given a choice, death or life. Mark states that he wants to live, and so he becomes the moon god's eyes and hands, his vengeance, the Knight of Khonshu. We then jump to the present as Mr. Knight makes his way through the derelict mental hospital in search of Khonshu. He hears what sound like cries of distress from Marlene, calling for his help from a nearby room. But as he rushes to her aid, he is instead greeted by Dr. Amut and the jackal-headed orderlies Billy and Bobby. They quickly sedate him and prepare him for a session of aggressive shock therapy. This scene in the present is then placed side by side with the events of the previous flashback. As the orderlies place the helpless Mr. Knight onto the medical bed, Khonshu places the dying Mark Spector onto the stone altar as if done simultaneously. Time is blurred, and the past and present blend together. As the switch is flipped in the present, Mark Spector surges to life in the past. Marlene and one of the local workers from the archaeological dig are shocked to see him awake, and she tells Mark that he was dead. Mark Spector gets to his feet, convinced he's been resurrected, reborn, and filled with purpose. He declares, "I am a ghost, a specter of the moon's night of vengeance, and I have work to do." Mark's resolve is reflected in Mr. Knight, and he breaks free from his restraints and overcomes Amut and her jackals. He quickly ascends to the rooftop where Khonshu is waiting for him. Khonshu tries to stop Mark with illusions of a monstrous werewolf and the villains from his past, but Mark accepts them all as mere hallucinations and is undeterred. Left with only Khonshu before him, Mark refuses to be afraid anymore. He accepts his illness, and he is determined to continue to live his life. This determination weakens Khonshu, and in one final act of defiance, Mark combines all of his identities, and together they crush Khonshu into dust. With Khonshu gone, a peaceful calm falls over Mark, and he gazes up at the moon, relishing in the silence. Mark momentarily questions his reality, but it soon begins to rain. And each raindrop on his face feels real enough for Mark and his identities, and that's good enough for them.
Cool, thank you so much, Sparky Mularkey, our guest narrator for this episode, and a fantastic job in setting the scene for what was a fantastic finale, Connor.
Yeah, I think this issue, the emotions I still feel for this incredible issue are still with me from when we, not on the pod, but read it back in January when it released, when Into the Night was the group was originally called was it Fist of Khonshu, back when we were talking with some of our first Looney members. I think it's such an incredibly just resonating issue, and I think above all else, those final pages are just some of the most breathtaking
they are
in comics.
Yeah. It's I mean, and even the opening pages as well. Just absolutely brilliant. When the battered Mark kind of he kind of looks up into the moon as well, and when he comes to the temple for Khonshu, Smallwood just outdoes himself. And we mentioned before in the previous episode, Connor, about Corey Petit's lettering. But this just sets the tone, and it actually works in parallel with each other, both past and present. And it was just, I found it just phenomenal.
Yeah, I think this is, sorry to cut you off, I'll just say it's sort of top Lemire for me. Some of my favourite runs of Animal Man and Essex County, the graphic novels, all sort of come through with this incredibly personal and touching finale for a very crazy book.
Yeah, it's a very emotional ride, isn't it? Like, Lemire really knows how to, tug at the heartstrings, not only in this issue, but throughout the whole ride, from all three arcs. Particularly we mentioned also as well a couple of issues ago about when Mr. Knight was trying to bring his personalities back to him, and in effect, they were to die. Remember how we kind of met up with Stephen Grant, and Stephen was talking about, I've got all these memories of life. Lemire is so good at doing this, and this last issue as well. There's a sort of resoluteness, I think, to Mark, and it's like, I'm not going to take any more of this crap kind of thing. So there's a strength that comes through. And Lemire just, he conveys it in different ways, which kind of make it subtle, but also quite exciting as well. So I guess before we go into anything, shall we go into one of your aspects, Connor? What was one of the first big aspects for you for this issue?
First big aspect. Mine was very much in the second half of the issue, but. Mm-hmm. I think I'll start we'll leave the final part of this issue for our final aspect, but in the latter half of this issue, it's really about Khonshu trying to break Mark for good to make him a empty, carved-out vessel for him to inhabit, and Mark is just so defiant. Khonshu basically tries to throw every fear and every like bit of Mark's past and what made him who he is at him to try and stop him for good. But Mark realizes that no, this is who he is, and in an incredibly sort of even touching moment where Mark realizes his own weakness and his own illness and the fact that he can live his life like this, he overcomes the control that Khonshu has on him. Khonshu basically lived through him by basically demeaning and keeping Mark's life down, is almost like burying him in the dirt. And this is sort of the first time Mark realizes that he's outgrown Khonshu. He doesn't need Khonshu at all. And it's incredibly powerful. Mark punching a werewolf and getting over his fears to finally beat the man that has basically groomed him into this being over his entire life.
Yeah, you get little cameos from all of Mark's rogue gallery in it as well, and it's a great way, isn't it? Of it's literally Khonshu just throwing everything at Mark, trying to kind of force him into some sort of submission. And Khonshu's a bit of a creep, isn't he? Like he just never stops, does he? Like we saw last issue with Mark in the Brainscape, trying to free himself of Khonshu's hold. Khonshu just is kind of again and again he's trying to control and beat Mark. And over here in this issue, he literally throws everything at him. So he's got, as you mentioned, Jack Russell, the werewolf. He ends up beating him on the moon, so there's flashes of here and there, and then you got Bushman, and then there's a whole little you see a little bit of Stained Glass Scarlet there, and Black Spectre as well. So they're just Khonshu's trying to use fear, I guess, to break Mark, but he just won't do it, and that's I think the running theme of this, how Mark is so strong in his belief that this is no longer going to be the case. He's not going to be controlled by Khonshu. And funnily enough as well, Connor, how we mentioned in the primer pages, how one of the loonies as well made mention that possibly Mark has Khonshu as an aspect now as well. This seems to be all heading towards Mark finally freeing himself of control of Khonshu and maybe in effect controlling Khonshu. So this is it was just really well done, I think, by. And
to talk about
sorry, go on.
No, I'll let you finish.
Oh no, that was it. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I was just saying, if you look at this scene, which I hope you have your issues out reading along, or if not, I'll possibly post some art up. But I think this scene of just pure onslaught, I think the amazing colouring of Mark's all-white outfit is used well against like the incredibly, not so much detail, but so like definely coloured characters in the backgrounds of Bushman and this like apocalyptic New York with the red and blacks of his cast, and it's just this pure white that stands out. Yeah, almost a shining beacon of defiance in a way.
Yeah, it's a perfect example, Connor, again of how Geordie Belair has used the white effectively, used like the negative space in it, and you're totally right. It just really shines out, doesn't it? Really good stuff. But yeah, that's a big moment. Yeah, of basically it's a turning point of this issue, isn't it? Where Khonshu basically just throws everything at Mark, and it's the final test. If he gets broken, then he's back to square one. But he proves himself to be a lot stronger than Khonshu thinks. Look, my first aspect as well. It goes back a bit to the first half, and I thought one of the big things in this issue as well, kind of on the back of previous issue 13, is that we still get the rounding off of the retelling of Mark's origin. So last issue we kind of got that bit where Bushman and Mark confront each other, and that point where Bushman leaves Mark for dead, and that's kind of the catalyst for Mark becoming Moon Knight. In this final issue, we see that classic tale of Marlene seeing Mark resurrected. So he's made his way to the temple. He's obviously passed out or died, and as they enter the temple, he screams out and he's alive again. And one of the big things here, I think, is there's it's a word for word, I think, of Munch's origin.
Cool.
Yeah, so where Mark says, "I'm a ghost, a spectre of the moon's night of vengeance, and I have work to do," that's ripped straight off.
Definitely.
The Munch origin, and I just love how this is the modern version of it. And it's still very true to the original, but you see with Smallwood's fantastic art, and you see the Khonshu statue with the cape draped around it, which Mark will eventually steal and become Moon Knight. I thought it was just great. It kind of, I got real chills from it, because it was a good way to retell the origin.
Yeah, and it's so perfect. The end of this issue shows Mark finally breaking free of Khonshu, and our flashback takes us to the part where he first accepted Khonshu. It's a real sort of, at the end we're shown the beginning, and it's almost like the perfect tale of this run concluding is by showing where Moon Knight began as a character up until now, and it's interesting because it's this flashback, and the fact that he is the Moon Knight of Vengeance is never painted as like sort of a dark or somber thing. He seems so assured in it, and I suppose that's in a way sort of comment on how he ended up becoming Moon Knight, and how he was Moon Knight all along, not just Khonshu's pup, as he likes to call him.
Yeah, definitely. It's it was good. How about your other aspect, Connor?
Yes, this will lead quite perfectly into yours, but like I said, possibly just some of the 5 greatest pages, just most touching pages in comics I've seen. The end of this issue, in the defeating of Khonshu, grasping his hands around that skull,
Yes. There's
classic. Jake Lockley, Stephen Grant, Mark Spector, and Moon Knight, and I love that. The pronoun changes from like I to our and us, and it shows that he's finally accepted who we are. And it just, as the issue ends, it just cuts. There's just the one full page.
Yeah.
Of where you can tell from the background that Mark's back in New York.
Yeah.
This is safe, this is home. And then just the pages, the rain.
Yes.
And Mark finally feeling quiet. It's just, it's so much. It's so beautiful.
It's such a good way to end it, isn't it? And it's all, again, always helped by the art and the colours, and the very predominant green, which we associate with New Egypt, which was spoken about in the previous episodes. So this alternate reality where New York is taken over by Egypt and sand and pyramids, but that classic page, Connor, as you mentioned, where all his personalities get hold of Khonshu's bird skull and just smash it to bits. It's a beautiful bit of art there with just again Smallwood's art. It's like dust, it's got speckles and fragments here and there, and then, as you say, that new page where he returns to New York and you see the New York skyline and the green is gone, and the dust is kind of blowing away. It's just it's just really 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 powerful stuff. It's really good. That links to my my aspect, and I've kind of come around again, similar to my aspect last issue, where things come full circle. And I just wanted to talk about it's all in the eyes, and again Lemire and Smallwood's use of Mark's eyes, and a lot of it has to do with Smallwood's talent as an artist, just how the use of the eyes for the characters just paint 1,000 words. So we get actually a lot of if we look a lot of Mark's close-ups of his face, and if you look into his eyes, there's a lot of determination and strength in it. And as we spoke before, this issue is all about how Mark is stronger now and how he's not going to buckle to Khonshu. And you see that in all the close-ups of his eyes. And we spoke, Connor, as well before about, again, Loonies, if you look at page 13, with a determined Mark just looking straight through the fourth wall, how that's kind of reflected with, at the beginning, issue 1, there's him and the close-up of his eyes, and it's more dazed and glazed. So it's a massive difference between issue 1 and issue 14. And even if you look even further back, that as well, when Mark is in that small room with Billy and Bobby and Amut, there's a determination and a bit of craziness to his eyes as well as he snaps his bonds. So they're facing a very different Mark here, someone that knows and is driven to do exactly what they want and knows exactly what has to be done. So it was a nice touch that this was reflected in the eyes. And to cap that off, as you were saying, Connor, when the rain starts to fall, when he again looks up at the moon, and this is a recurring theme of him looking up at the moon, it's throughout a lot of the issues. This final one, where you get the shot of the back of his head looking up, and then it pans around to his face, and that look of calm, like on his face but in his eyes as well, is just brilliant. And it's again testament to Smallwood's art. But it was what a way to cap off the issue. And as the rain falls, he looks at his mask and he puts it back on, and he gets to work. So I just loved how those running themes were kind of used all the way through and capped off at the end.
Yeah, I think the best, sort of the best book is one that doesn't feel like it could just be a TV show, and the best comic isn't. The best comic is something that doesn't feel like it could be just a book. This issue it's just so much in the art. It's entirely that perfect combination of Lemire's writing and Smallwood's art. Like, there's just a way you couldn't capture how this story's been built and climaxed outside of the way you see that the looking up in the sky and the closing of the eyes, the one raindrop falls, and the final just passionate image of Mark back in the suit adjusting the tie. Mr. Knight's back in the real world and we're ready to go.
Yeah, I got that. I put that in there, slipped that in there, Connor, as a little note. I reckon Mr. Knight's got to learn how to do a Windsor knot. What do you reckon? Because he keeps on adjusting his tie. It keeps on coming loose. so many frames of him adjusting his tie. It's like, Mark, mate, either get a bit bigger size collar, so you can do your top button up, or get a Windsor knot happening. So that was so that was issue 14. My gosh, Connor, it was so cool to do the whole Lemire run. And what a fantastic way for it to bow out, and for Bemis to pick up next issue. Have you got any notes there for this issue?
Yeah, one of my big ones is the color red. If you've listened or read this series, you know that red's been a very big color of adversity and evil. Khonshu hanging out in the cubicles bathed in red light in the general asylum. The big change in this issue, I noticed, something as prominent as the red is changed. Mark isn't suffering the oppression of the red, he's in control. In this final thing, you see the snap as he breaks free as if change in a red, onomatopoeia, and as he delivers a final blow to Billy or Bobby. it's a red background panel.
Yeah.
And in the final walk to face Khonshu, when Mark's so determined and walking, saying that he's outgrown you, he's bathed in red, he's the one in control now. He's the one who's going to win.
Yeah, and it's augmented even further with that look on his face as well, that determination. So it's like, yeah, exactly as you say, there's that red aspect to it, but it's like he doesn't care. He knows what he has to do. He knows where Khonshu is, so he goes straight up to the roof. But yeah, no, good note. I had just the rain at the end. I thought, again, a bit of a symbol there of a cleansing of the soul, and how this being the end of the 14-issue run, it's a new beginning for Mark. So I thought that was really cool. I mean, Lemire used rain a bit earlier on as well in the first arc to kind of parallel like the sandstorms that would be going around, but this is used very differently, and it's very much a kind of like to me it's a bit of closure.
And I suppose this whole run I was going to bring up in the sort of final closing as we give our Crescent Dart rating. This whole series is so self-contained in the fact that, it's a story inside Mark's, it's entirely about introspective inside Mark's mind, and, there's no tangible death of Bushman, It's all about Mark accepting who he is and removing his ties, which is sort of the big change. Those two are the big changes, and that it's just such a perfect run that it exists so separate, but that rain just gives way to a whole new era of storytelling, as we're seeing with Bemis, where, it's not like he's accomplished everything he's ever wanted and he's beaten his rogues gallery, This is basically an all new Mark, an accepted Mark, and we see that going into Bemis, that, this is a changed Mark. He knows who he is.
Yeah, exactly, and exciting times ahead, because you're right. I mean, he hasn't solved everything. He hasn't finished by any means. So this end can very much be the beginning, which I think is what Lemire is kind of hinting towards, and it's a great way for a writer to actually leave the series. And I think again, Bemis mentions it in that article that we mentioned earlier. He does it really well. Lemire gives him so many options, as a springboard. Because, there are some writers, I guess, that can write themselves into a corner, and then the next writer comes along and is going, what the hell am I going to do with this now, really good that Lemire's kind of really good. Lemire does a really good job at ending series, I reckon. Would you agree, or
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just thinking of actually other series that he's done, but I'm pretty sure he does, doesn't he?
Yeah, totally. I think that's very much just Lemire's whole writing style. I think just in general, I don't think like Lemire always leaves a mark on the characters he writes, but obviously in the wavy world of comics, you can't take a character and change them forever, and I think he likes to find that specific part and just tweak it, like we see in Bloodshot of and that whole new era of looking at that, and obviously that's different in his own series, but we see that in Animal Man and the way family's used in that. It's just sort of
I guess I'm just because I'm starting to compare him with other writers, and it might be an unfair comparison, because I was thinking of Colin Bunn, actually, who was a great Moon Knight writer as well. He had a nice 6-issue stint, but I think with the sheer number of works that Colin Bunn currently is loaded with, because I'm thinking of the Deadpool kills the rest of the Marvel Universe again. Which I thought it really fizzed out towards the end. It really didn't end properly. And I think a lot of Cullen Bunn's, a lot of the short arcs kind of tend to do that. Whereas Lemire, to me, very strong way to end, which is pretty cool. Look, I've only got one other little note, Connor, as well, and it was just got me thinking as well. Like, if you look at the first page or the beginning of this issue, Mark some years ago is, he was left for dead, and he's traveling to the temple, and he finally gets there. He are we to believe that he beats Marlene and Bushman there, because they had a helicopter, and the only reason I can think of is that Frenchie kind of took them the scenic route, and like took them the long way, because Mark had to have been there first, right, in order to have died and then to come across him for him to be resurrected. Because if they were there and then he wandered in, Marlene would have seen him alive, right? She sees him dead, and he gets brought back to life. So, explain that.
I definitely agree with that. That was something that caught me off guard, like just as much as it did you. It seems.
Yeah.
It just sort of. It made me question if Khonshu had a hand in that, almost as I suppose the way time works in reading a single issue is always, sometimes hard to convey.
Yeah, true.
But it almost seems like Khonshu almost teleported him there, like as if Khonshu's mystical direction took him from collapsing in the desert to being in front of the what was it, temple?
Yeah,
No.
the temple.
Pyramid. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kryptonite. Yeah, no, I agree. It was definitely sort of like am I expected to believe this is Khonshu's doing, or Mark's just running fast?
Yeah. Found the shortcut, as a crow flies. Anyway, I guess we have to suspend some disbelief.
True.
Crescent Dart ratings, Connor. This is going to be an interesting one. So what would you give this one?
10 out of 5.
10 out of 5. Unprecedented. Fantastic.
No, I think, I'm so biased. It's a top 5, like, of all-time comics run, and this issue is definitely a 5 out of 5. It's a perfect closing. It's perfect at what Lemire does. It's perfect at characterization. It understands Moon Knight. It opens a whole new doorway for Moon Knight. It's just such a climactic issue while being so personal and, in a way, small.
Yeah. I'd agree with you as well, and I think I was imposing my own parameters. I gave 5 out of 5 last issue, for issue 13. 14, I'd give it a 5 out of 5 again. So that as much as it's really good. I still like issue 13. I think a bit more than issue 14, but I know that last issues and finales are hard to do because you have to really wrap up everything. So in that regard, it's done really well as well. And Smallwood's art is just constant. It's so consistent, isn't it? It's just so consistently good. You really can't say much more about it. 5 out of 5 for being a really entertaining last issue and for wrapping things up really well. Yeah. So, a goodbye to Lemire. Lemire's run.
I mean, we said goodbye in January, really, but still it's sad to see it go on the podcast again.
Yeah, it is.
But it's kind of tempered by Bemis next week,
Yeah, true. I can't. Yeah, exactly. It's just this week, couple of days. Oh my God, it's only a couple of days.
Yeah, true.
It's pretty cool.
Got the time.
Alrighty, well, as that one is closed off, we have a second review for this episode, Connor, and I will pass it on to Sparky again to give us a rundown. Oh, hang on, sorry, again. There's a bit of a... Hang on, we'll keep this in, why not? Look, I forgot about this. Look, there's another recap here, so just to kind of set the scene as to what's happening, because, we've picked this is a one-shot, but you kind of have to know, I guess, what's happened before. Connor, can I please ask you to give us a recap?
Yeah, sure. Just taking up to my first page. In the age of the Superhero Registration Act and the 50 States Initiative, the only good hero is one that plays by the book, which Moon Knight most assuredly does not. So Mark Spector does the last thing that anyone expects him to, and gets himself a registration card. Now Moon Knight legally does what he always has, beating down dealers bloody, throwing paroled convicts down flights of stairs, and carving crescent moons into the foreheads of his victims. Acts that don't escape the watchful eyes of the Registration Act's champion, Tony Stark. When Moon Knight's longtime adversary, Black Spectre, frames frames Spectre for a string of violent murders, Stark suspends Spectre's registration card and demands that he cease all activity as Moon Knight immediately. However, eager to subdue Black Spectre, Moon Knight disobeys Stark's order and ends up killing Black Spectre in front of a massive crowd of Initiative supporters. His identity compromised, his home raided by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and a warrant out for his arrest. Spectre goes into hiding. In the company of wolves.
In the company of wolves, yeah. So, apologies for that. So, thank you, Connor. So, with that in mind, I'll throw it to Sparky to give us the bare bones.
Up next is Moon Knight Volume 5, Issue Number 20, In the Company of Wolves. Released July 16th, 2008. Written by Mike Benson, with art by Mike Deodato Jr. and colors by Rain Barreto, with lettering by VC's Joe Caramagna and editing by Alex Alonso. Deep in the sewers of New York, Crawley returns to check up on an exhausted Mark Spector, who is currently in hiding after recent events against the Black Spectre. Mark awakens at Crawley's arrival and discovers several days have already come and gone since he lost consciousness. It's upon awakening that Mark remembers a time when he hunted a man who might have felt as he does now, hunted and caged. A man named Jack Russell. Back in 1994, we see Russell as a prisoner in an unknown location. His captors visit periodically to extract some of his blood. Not far away, on the nocturnal streets of New York City, Moon Knight apprehends a man who appears far more terrified of someone else, more terrified than he is of even the Moon Knight. Suddenly, the unlucky man is shot dead by an unknown assailant from an adjacent rooftop, and although Moon Knight gives chase, he is unable to catch a glimpse of the mysterious assassin. Meanwhile, Detective Flint is having a hard time cracking a case involving a series of grisly murders. It's apparent that it's the work of a serial killer, so the detective ventures into the seedy side of the city to try to get some answers. But as hard as he pushes, Detective Flint can't seem to find any good leads. It's not until he comes across a heavily mutilated body, which he autopsies, that he starts to consider something more supernatural. The mutilations appear to have been inflicted by a large animal, a huge dog, or maybe a werewolf. With this in mind, he reaches out to the one person he knows who may have some experience with the matter, Moon Knight. Across town, a mysterious limousine pulls up to a group of homeless people and a silver-haired man, the very same man who had been holding Jack Russell captive and taking his blood, offers money and a job to one of the homeless men. Back near the Brooklyn Bridge, Detective Flint meets up with Moon Knight and discusses his findings. Moon Knight denies any knowledge of wild dogs or otherwise, but Flint knows better. Acting upon their conversation, Moon Knight changes to his Jake Lockley identity and hits the streets in his cab, hoping to come across information regarding Detective Flint's case. He ends up at a bar called Lou Pine, after dropping off some shady characters there, and he decides to investigate later. Using his billionaire persona, Stephen Grant, Moon Knight returns to Lupine with Marlene. It's Marlene who makes a breakthrough after chatting with the local clientele within the bar. She finds that there is an underground fight club where bets are taken and where wolves fight to the death. Stephen Grant changes to Moon Knight, and although Marlene is keen to join the fight, Moon Knight tells her to stay behind and to call Detective Flint. Moon Knight discovers the subterranean dungeons below the bar where Jack Russell is kept. He manages to incapacitate the guards, but not before Jack Russell's cage is accidentally opened. Now with Jack Russell, the werewolf, on the loose, Moon Knight knows raw power when he sees it, and so he's forced to make a run for it. In another part of the dungeon, Moon Knight finds others who have been infected with Jack's blood, turning them into werewolves as well, and he sets them free to serve out violent justice on their captors. It's not long, however, before Moon Knight comes face to face with Jack Russell himself, a hulking 8-foot-tall mass of fur and fang, a pure killing machine. They fight, and although Moon Knight manages to evade the werewolf's claws, the pure instinct and ferocity of the werewolf's attacks get the better of him. Marlene shows up in time to stop the werewolf from delivering the killing stroke, and it's enough distraction for Moon Knight to put in one last final effort, and in an unrelenting series of savage blows, Moon Knight is able to defeat the werewolf. Knowing that Jack Russell is innocent of the crimes that his alter ego, the werewolf, commits, Moon Knight allows Russell to escape. Shortly after, Frenchie arrives in the Moonjet to pick up Moon Knight and Marlene from Lou Pine and the dungeons below. The memories of Jack Russell and the adventure in Lou Pine stick with Mark as we see him again in the present day. Finally rested from his encounter with Black Spectre, and not wanting to live like an animal, Mark picks up his gear and walks out. He's ready to face the consequences, no matter what they are.
Yes, thank you once again, Sparky Mularkey, for that great narration of issue 20 in the Company of Wolves. What a cool little one-shot, Connor.
Yeah, it so nicely fits into the events that the recap says, but also so distinctly stands out as a one-shot as it's set sort of in 1994.
Yeah, I mean, you can, it definitely is a one-shot, but yeah, there are little things like Mark in hiding, and what's he doing down in the sewers when you start reading the comic that may throw off someone that just picks this issue up, but it's small enough for you to kind of gloss over and go through it. First impressions, Connor, then of the comic as a whole. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I think it's in three ways great. I think it stands out as an amazing action issue with Deodato's art.
Yeah.
It stands as a great detective style tale. Really stood out to me. I'll cover that in my aspects really, and I love its sort of introspective narrative about Moon Knight making the decision in the present by looking to his past and how he acted. I think it was a really standout issue that took you into the brutality of Moon Knight and that fine edge he walks.
Yeah. There's definitely a grimmer aspect to it, isn't there? And not only, and I'll get to it with one of my aspects as well. Not only with the nature of this story, with Jack Russell as a werewolf, but Moon Knight's depicted as quite a menacing figure. He even says in one of the earlier bits where he chases down this goon, and the goon's obviously he's scared of something, and Moon Knight goes, "Look at me, whoever you're scared of, they're not your problem anymore. Be scared of me." So he's such an imposing figure here. It's really good, and Deodato's art for me was one of the highlights. First impressions was it's fantastic, and it is a really good action romp, and I do like the detective component of it as well, Connor. I think that was really cool with Detective Flint. Is one of our favourite characters, but you're looking at the nature of his cases, and it's he's looking at dismembered, bodies. He's chasing a murderer, and he even mentions, a serial killer. So we're getting into the really dark and seedy side of New York here.
For sure. So would you like to crack on with your aspect to start, possibly?
Yeah, so one of my first aspects, I'd say, was a welcome return to the supernatural. I thought this was a great issue. We haven't seen it too much, as you mentioned in the recap, there was a whole thing about the Superhero Registration Act, about Civil War, about being at more of a political stance of where superheroes are, which is very much a kind of a grounded comic book storytelling. So this issue I thought was really cool because it kind of goes back to Moon Knight's grassroots, which he began with, and that's kind of fighting a werewolf. And yeah, just to see Jack Russell again. I must say, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Jack Russell. He's pretty cool. He's a tragic, isn't he? He's a tragic figure. He doesn't
a tragic fate here as well.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and like he doesn't, he can't control it. He's kind of like the Hulk, right? So, yeah, you've got to have some sympathy for him. But I loved the supernatural aspect of this, Connor, and as we see later on, it's these guys using Jack Russell to extract his blood to create a fighting ring of basically werewolves, using homeless people to infect them with the werewolf blood. Yeah, and it was it's really good. Everything's set at night as well, so it's it kind of reminded me, and this is kind of showing my age as well. There was one of my favourite shows, actually. I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s. It was actually called, I think it was just called Werewolf or Wolf, and it was a TV show. I don't think it lasted more than one season, but it was. This reminded me exactly of it. It was a lot of shadows. It was always at night, and this guy was just, he just wanted to live a normal life, but he turned into a werewolf and started killing, and it was quite grisly. But yeah, it was a welcome return to it. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the supernatural element, Connor?
Yeah, it's really what I want. Like when I think to what's coming with the Bemis book and the very supernatural setup it has, I look to this book and I think, yeah, I love this, and I want this in the run coming. I want one shots like this, or expanded into 2-3 issue arcs or whatever. Just I love this storytelling. It's sort of a unique look into the world of Moon Knight, and something fun. It's got the supernatural. It's got sort of shady corporation intrigue, which is always great.
Yeah. I'm not sure if. I really hope it has that Bemis's and Burroughs' run has these sorts of elements in it, but I'm not sure if Burroughs' art will convey the same as Deodato's here. Deodato's it's very much a nocturnal thing. And look, nothing to take away from Burroughs and Bemis saying that they want to create this nocturnal look in the new run, but just looking at the previews that Burroughs have introduced, which look really cool in the preview pages, and then looking at this Deodato's art, and especially the way a lot of it's got to do with colours as well, but especially the way he draws Moon Knight, and always in shadow. It's just really good, I think.
It is absolutely menacing, just to put it simply. Like when I think of the specific use of the costume, and you're right, the shadows, and this issue really has Moon Knight getting the better of basically every goon in this issue. It's brutal, it's menacing, it's terrifying.
Yeah, he's it's a real treat to see Deodato draw Moon Knight. How about one of your aspects, Connor?
I think I shall begin with how much I love this being a detective's tale. So you would have heard there, and one of Rey's future aspects about how wonderfully graphically violent this issue is, but that really comes in the second half of this issue, and really that first part is this really great detectives issue. It has great characterization of Flint, and his sort of classic mentality of the Force, and how he relies on Moon Knight. I think it shows really well Moon Knight's own informants in the world. It shows him using Jake Lockley to get information, using Stephen Grant to get in. We got Gina's Diner, which Flint uses to get Moon Knight's attention. You
even have that really cool crime scene that Flint comes across. And the broken window, that look like an abandoned apartment or wherever it is. But it's just so gruesome, isn't it? But it's definitely a detective thing.
And he's even what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and you're right about the crime scene. Yeah, I totally sort of even forgot to mention that. The great narration he has over it as the police force seems to realize that this is the worst kind of killer, a serial killer, and working out that these aren't these aren't rats, they're dog bites, and that, now he
Yeah.
has to turn to Moon Knight.
Yeah, the realization that, goddamn, this isn't just like, this may not be like a terrible serial killer, a normal serial killer as it is, but it might be something a little more. Yeah, when the autopsy comes in and the what do you call them, Connor? The mortician? What is she? She conducts the autopsy. She I just had a mind blank. But yeah, when she says, "Oh yeah," as you say, she said, like, you've seen rats as big as dogs. Like, ever seen any dogs as big as men? So it's like, and I think that's the turning point there. That's a twist where we start to go towards the supernatural element. Yeah.
I also love Marlene really sort of gets the cool spotlight as well in the detective work. She
does.
She she's carrying her own gun around. She's investigating as well. She's getting them into places and getting the information to find the real bulk of the finds.
Exactly, and she does get her information, although she does get some unwanted attention from one guy at the bar, and she subsequently subdues him with a strategically placed grab at him. So she's great. I love Marlene. She's just, she takes the initiative. She actually gets results, and she's not afraid. She always wants to get into the action, no matter how much Mark says, no, you stay here, you wait for Flint, I'm going to go in as Moon Knight. She's like, well, I can take care of myself. And again, she's the one that ends up helping Mark out, or Moon Knight out, when he's in a bit of trouble, when he's fighting Jack Russell. She ends up shooting the werewolf, although it doesn't kill him, but it distracts him long enough for Moon Knight to do his thing. So, Marlene's
Mark
great.
would be dead without her in this issue, quite frankly.
Oh, how many times would he be dead without her? Yeah, it's really cool. And I guess that would lead to my other aspect, which was also, as Connor mentioned, I found the big thing about this was the violence of. I can't believe there wasn't a warning on the front cover of it.
Yeah, there seemed like a whole new time. We didn't have to do that or something. It was crazy.
Yeah, because this has definitely got explicit content on it, and short of them just kind of bleeping out swear words as well. You have something pretty close to a Max comic, I reckon. There are like dismembered bodies. There's one scene which I must say I morbidly was enjoying, was when Mark punches Moon Knight punches one of the guys, and the guy with the ponytail, Connor, and then he falls next to the cage, and Jack Russell grabs him, and then the next panel you see down, his head just goes dunk dunk dunk. So he just gets decapitated by this werewolf, and Moon Knight makes a beeline for the exit. So it's just wickedly graphic, and it just adds to the whole tone, the whole detective noir, the whole nighttime nocturnal aspect of this issue, and it was just a lot of fun for a one shot.
Yeah, in every way it's such a dark issue. The setup for why Moon Knight's thinking to the past, the fact that this is 1994, so even a younger Jack Russell being forced into a cage and having his blood extracted to be forced into kidnapped homeless people for cage fights, and the fact Moon Knight's even morality here. He opens up like a cage upon a bunch of people, and they just get torn to shreds, and I'm guessing the werewolves kill each other as well.
Yeah, I saw that when I was reading it, going, surely he hasn't done that, has he? Like he's literally sent those guys to their deaths, and what a terrible way to die as well. Probably been ripped apart and eaten by those things. So, oh gosh, very, very dark stuff.
And I love Deodato's art here. I think particularly it's an amazing standout issue, but there are 2 full-page spreads. Yep. The first one being the first time you see a cage fight between two of the werewolves, and the second being the fight between Russell in werewolf form, the werewolf by night, and Moon Knight and they've got these slanted panels going diagonally, and they're just full
Oh,
of
yes.
brutal swings and crazy, this ambient sort of reddish purple hue over this dark arena they're fighting, and it's just fantastic. It's a real standout of the time, I think.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but you're totally right. It's how cool is that? The slanted kind of panels. I would have picked that my two favourite panels or two favourite shots of this issue was actually just that page before, Connor, where you see this 10-foot tall werewolf by night, and Moon Knight's thinking, how do you fight something that's pure instinct? And I think he even says as well, Moon Knight earlier on, he goes, I don't remember Jack Russell being that big, like the werewolf being that big. But Deodato just, he smashes it out of the park, and it is such a fearsome look of the werewolf. The other shot I really loved was when Detective Flint catches up with Moon Knight by the Golden Gate Bridge. Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and it's just Moon Knight there saying, so talk. And he just appears, like Flint is smoking a cigarette, and there's just the lighting from the headlights, and Flint leaning up against the bonnet of the car. But that's just a classic. I love that classic pose there. And there's just not even any eyes from Moon Knight. It's just a dark black space under his hood. I thought that was really, really imposing. So, really enjoyable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I love the cape as well.
The capes, yeah. Yep.
It's really long and flowing here, really stylistically chosen to be like that.
Yeah. It's brilliant. And it's so funny because, he's all in white, Moon Knight, but the way that this whole tone of this issue, with the shadows and such, he doesn't come across as white at all. It's still very dark for someone that you're meant to see coming at you. He still manages to have a very grim kind of look to him. Yeah. I've only got one note in this issue, Connor. I thought it was pretty cool. There was a pop culture reference I picked up, and I'll have to call out Loonies, if you're looking at it's on page 17, and Deodato pays a reference to a Mexican actor, I believe, Danny Trejo, and he was from movies such as Predators, From Dusk Till Dawn, and Machete, I think the Quentin Tarantino films, and he's one of the thugs in the cab of Jake Lockley. And he's one of the thugs that Jake Lockley kind of gets some information about Lupine, that nightclub. So are you familiar with Danny Trejo?
No, sadly.
Oh, you should look him up on IMDb. He's a very distinct face, but a very tough-looking guy. I don't think he'll ever get a role as a I don't know. As a doctor or a lawyer or something. He very much looks like a criminal, but I'm sure he's a very very nice fella. Yeah. So I reckon that is who he's pinched his face reference for. Yeah. So apart from that, any final last thoughts on the issue there, Connor?
Just give me a quick glance through, but no, I think that's really it. I suppose we'll crack onto our Crescent Dart ratings, huh?
Yeah,
if it comes back
definitely.
To me, I'll pop in.
Yeah, no worries. Look, as you mentioned, I think it had a really good balance of action. A detective tale. It was grisly. It was dark. It had a lot of, for me, it had a lot of edge to it. I would have to give it. I would say it would be up there for me because it's a one shot as well. It's nice and tight. I'd say 4.5 Crescent Darts for this one. It really is enjoyable. I hadn't read it for a long time, and I read it again, and just the art, Deodato's art, just really gets me, and the colours. If I can just have a look back at who the colorist was, Joe? Is it Joe? No, Rain Burrito. Really good colouring, with the reds and the crimsons. 4.5. I think it was really good. How about yourself?
I 100% agree. I think this stands as a fantastic one-shot. You're right, it's just such a great neo-noir story. I love the detective work. It is menacingly violent, crazy gory, stylistically incredible. Moon Knight getting beaten up just looks fantastic, and the werewolves are amazing.
Yeah.
And in the larger context of the story that was happening around him, I love the introspective of this issue. This was Mark, once again at his lowest, hiding out in the present, thinking back to the past, where he almost became an animal and having to think back to such a violent memory to remind himself that he didn't cross a line like that to become an animal that day. And returning to the present. I think that works so well. And maybe not so much as a one-shot for anyone jumping in, of course, but definitely 4.5 present darts.
Yeah, I think totally justified. But hang on, that actually just got me thinking there, kind of what you're saying. Yeah, he was introspective and thinking that never crossing the line. But he released those werewolves at those guys. so a little slip up there, Mr. Mike Benson.
Let bygones be bygones.
But let bygones they were terrible. They were really terrible people, Connor. Those guys. So the only way out was death. But no, totally agree. 4.5. It was. I really loved it, and it's one of those issues that I wouldn't mind reading again and again. And it's really top stuff. So any loonies out there on Facebook or in the group or in the chat room, let us know your thoughts as well. I'll be really interested to see what you think of issue 20. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, totally. By all means, if you guys want us to read them out or get us having discussion, just email us, see us on the group page, whatever.
Yeah, should be great. So we're almost rounding out this episode 14, Connor, before we go into the new run that we've been hankering for so long now.
Like Christmas in November.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait. But anyway, just for our next segment, Spectacle, I just want to do a couple of shout-outs. First off would be, of course, Sparky Mularkey. Again, thank you so much, Sparky, for jumping in and narrating both issues this episode. It was really cool. It was also nice to just have a chat with you over on Twitter as well. Very much appreciated. Anyway, so you can catch Sparky Mularkey on Comics, Cosplay and More. So if you go to YouTube and you just type Sparky and Mularkey, Mularkey, you should come up with her channel. We'll add her link to the show notes, of course. Also, she's a comic book store employee, a worker as well, and I wanted to also shout out her comic book store where she works at, and that is Comics to Astonish, and that's based in Columbia, Maryland. So for our US contingent of loonies, if you're near there or if you are a local, please stop by and say hi to Sparky. I'm sure she'll be quite happy for that.
Thank you, Sparky. I think your channel is absolutely amazing. I'm so happy you came on here for narration. It was incredible. So yes.
Yeah, and I think she's coming out. Sparky's coming out with a new video very shortly. I think she was in the middle of editing it, but she somehow found some time to narrate us as well. So thank you.
We appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I wanted to shout out to one of our loony listeners, Tommy, from our Facebook group. I think I would give him the roving reporter of the week or the month. So thank you, Tommy. He came up with a lot of news, and admittedly, a lot of the news tonight was based on his post. So thank you so much, Tommy, and we hope to hear from you soon. Wink, wink.
Yeah, in a time where Ray and I were both busy this week,
yeah.
Tommy, without fail, was there to post.
Yeah. So again, very much appreciated, Tommy. Yeah, I was a mess, a mindless mess, moving. So it was really good. So thank you so much for keeping the flame lit. And I think that's about it, Connor.
Yeah. another episode down.
Another episode down, and
no, I don't have the second half of that. I'm sorry.
I was about to say we can probably call our next episode legacy episodes. We can probably
We'll just jump to what is it? If this is 14, the next one will be 16, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because we had an episode 0. Connor, where can they find us?
Where can you find us? You can email us at moonknightpodcast@gmail.com. We'll read all feedback, whether you're loving or some you want to see on the show. Just email us in. We'd love to hear from you. Our website, Into the Night, podcast.wordpress.com. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com/ITKMoonKnight. We have a fantastic group where you can find our intrepid reporter Tommy and plenty of other amazing loonies discussing all day, every day with amazing finds at facebook.com/groups/IntoTheNight. Our Twitter handle is at ITKMoonKnight. Instagram, Tumblr, and YouTube. Just search for Into the Night. And likewise on all good podcast catchers.
Fantastic. Yep, we are out there, and we are slowly growing loonies. So yeah, spread the word, and let's keep on going. So another one, in the can, Connor. This is pretty cool. I guess I'll be hearing from you, in a few days or a couple of days.
When we'll be screaming about this new issue.
yeah. So cannot wait to air our views as well, Looney. So in the meantime, get reading with your comics, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yes, thank you so much as always for joining us, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night.
Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.